Our first scripture reading this morning comes from John chapter 15, verses 9 through 17. I've loved you the way my Father has loved me. Make yourselves at home in my love. If you keep my commands, you'll remain intimately at home in my love. That's what I've done, kept my Father's commands and made myself at home in his love. I've told you these things for a purpose, that my joy might be your joy, and your joy wholly mature. This is my command: love one another the way I loved you. This is the very best way to love. Put your life on the line for your friends. You are my friends when you do the things I command you. I'm no longer calling you servants, because servants don't understand what their master is thinking and planning. No, I've named you friends, because I've let you in on everything I've heard from the Father. You didn't choose me, remember. I chose you and put you in the world to bear fruit, fruit that won't spoil. As fruit bearers, whatever you ask the Father in relation to me, he gives you. But remember the root command: love one another.
Thank you. This morning's Act of Remembrance was written by a wonderful woman of the church named Reverend Dr. Lillian Perigoe. I had the pleasure of working with her a number of years ago, and she was one of the most irenic people I know. Irenic meaning peace-seeking. So I'm so happy to honor her this morning by using her work. But I want to share with you that it's not just us that are hearing this morning. Dan Benson, who has been here a few times, is using this morning. And another minister, part of our curling group, Deb Hart, is also using this morning. So we are in good company listening to her work.
Today we try to remember. It is easy to forget. To remember takes some effort. Nellie McClung knew that. She was a writer who put her talent and wit to work to support oppressed people throughout Canada. She was a staunch Methodist who supported the proposal for union and became an enthusiastic member of the new United Church in 1925. She was a Christian whose faith informed everything she did and was, including her politics. She was a wife, mother, and friend of many. In this excerpt from her memoirs, she writes as a mother whose son is going to war.
In my diary, I wrote that day, December the 4th, 1915. This morning, we said goodbye to our dear son, Jack, at the CNR station where snow lay fresh and white on the roofs and on the streets, white and soft and pure as a young heart. When we came home, I felt strangely tired and old, though I am only 42. But I know that my youth has departed from me. It is gone with our Jack, our beloved, our firstborn, the pride of our hearts. Strange fate, surely, for a boy who has never had a gun in his hands, whose ways are gentle and full of peace, who loves people, pities their sorrows, and would gladly help them to solve their problems. What have I done to you in letting you go into this inferno of war? And how could I hold you back without breaking your heart?
Fugitive Pieces, a novel by Canadian writer Anne Michaels, shows us the pieces of lives broken by war and the miracle of hope that can grow even out of devastation. In the following piece, we hear the beginning of the horror of Jacob Beer, a young Jewish boy in Poland who, from his hiding place, overhears what happens to the rest of his family, including his sister, Bella.
My sister had long outgrown the hiding place. Bella was 15, and even I admitted she was beautiful, with heavy brows and a magnificent hair like black syrup, thick and luxurious, a muscle down her back. A work of art, our mother said, brushing it for her while Bella sat in a chair. I was still small enough to vanish behind the wallpaper in the cupboard, cramming my head sideways between choking plaster and beams, eyelashes scraping. Since those minutes inside the wall, I've imagined that the dead lose every sense except hearing. The burst door, wood ripped from hinges, cracking like ice under shouts. Noises never heard before torn from my father's mouth. Then, silence. My mother had been sewing a button on my shirt. She kept her buttons in a chipped saucer. I heard the rim of the saucer in circles on the floor. I heard the spray of buttons like white teeth. I wanted to go to my parents, to touch them, but I couldn't unless I stepped in their blood. I ran and fell, and finally hid, digging myself into the ground, planting myself like a turnip, and covering my face with leaves. Then I felt the worst shame of my life. I was pierced with hunger, and suddenly I realized my throat aching without sound. Bella.
Mona Gould, a Canadian poet, was still a child when her brother left to fight in the Second World War. In a poem, she remembered him.
This was my brother at Dieppe, quietly a hero, who gave his life like a gift, without withholding nothing, his youth, his love, his enjoyment of being alive, his future like a book with pages, half the pages still uncut. This was my brother at Dieppe, the one who built a dollhouse when I was 7, complete to the last small frame. Nothing forgotten. He was awfully good at fixing things, at stepping into the breach when he was needed. That's what he did at Dieppe. He was needed, and even in death, must have been a little ashamed at his eagerness.
In October 1917, a young Canadian soldier named Talbot Papineau wrote to his mother about his experience in the trenches and his love and concern for her and his family.
October 29, 1917. Dearest Mother, after all, I've been able to write to you again before going over. We have been fortunate so far, and all things are cheerful. I've even shaved this morning, in a little dirty water. I was delighted last night to get 2 letters from you and a box of candy, which I have actually carried with me and have enjoyed. It was a cold night, and I slept only about 1 hour. Also a noisy night, I can assure you, with the earth full of vibrations. I hope by the same mail you receive another letter from me to say all is successfully over. But of course, it may be difficult or impossible to write for a few days, so don't worry. There seems so little to say when, if only I knew what was to happen, I might want to say so much. These would be poor letters to have as last ones. But you must know with what a world of love they are written. Always remember that I could not love thee so well, or you love me, did I not love honor more. You have given me courage and strength to go very happily and cheerfully into the good fight. Love to all, and a big hug for thee, my dear, brave little mother. Less than a week later, that same mother received a second letter. November 5, 1917, Mrs. L.J. Papineau. Dear Madam, in confirmation of my telegram to you of yesterday's date, I regret exceedingly to inform you that an official report has been received to the effect that Captain Acting Major T.M. Papineau, Military Cross, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, was killed in action on October 30, 1917. Yours truly, J.M. Knowles, Lieutenant.
Clarissa Estes, an internationally known poet, psychoanalyst, and author, has written The Faithful Gardener, a book of interlocked tales of loss, survival, and fierce rebirth centered around her uncle, a war-ravaged Hungarian peasant farmer and refugee, and about the many other almost saints who made her childhood so remarkable. In this passage, she reflects on the impact of war.
For a long time, our small house was filled with many people who had just come from war and back from the dead. They carried hundreds of horrific images and losses that cannot be described in words alone. What does it mean to live with a war and memories of war inside oneself? It means one lives in 2 worlds, one looking for hope, the other feeling hopeless. One looking for meaning, the other convinced that the only meaning in life is that there is no meaning in life. In each of our people who have suffered so greatly, there were 2 struggling persons, one living the life of the new world, the other running, constantly running from memories of hell that rose up and gave chase, ghosts animated by themselves, roused by the click of a door frame, a cat screeching suddenly in the night, sudden gust of wind causing a curtain to sweep a jar off a table and a shot to the floor, a sudden train whistle, and the sound of the long trestle rumbling. Mundane matters caused terror, tears of revulsion. There were wars in Uncle that made him remember, as he said, too much. There were wars between the death of hope and the hope for death, the hope for life, and the life of hope. Sometimes the only ceasefire that held for any length of time had to be negotiated by a treaty forged with much schnapps and much vodka.
We have all heard of the young Anne Frank, whose diary distilled for us the tragic experience of the victims of war. Exposed to the most inhumane conditions and pain, she still refused to surrender her right to life and future, and she maintained her faith and her hope that good would overcome evil.
It's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet, I keep them because, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death. I see the world gradually turned into a wilderness. I hear the ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the suffering of millions, and yet, when I look up into the heavens, I think it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. In the meantime, I must uphold my ideals, for perhaps the time will come when I shall be able to carry them out.
These words were found on the wall of a cellar in Cologne, Germany, where Jews hid from Nazis. I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love even when feeling it not. I believe in God even when God is silent. Thank you, readers.